Hey there, brother friends and sister friends. Welcome back to the Heart Set Above podcast, where therapy meets theology and where we talk about how to live well, love deeply, and walk faithfully, even in life's most complicated spaces. Today, we're kicking off a brand new series called Holding On and Letting Go when your adult child walks a different path. This isn't just for parents of LGBTQ kids, though my story starts there. It's for any Christian parent whose adult child is not currently walking with God, whose choices, lifestyle, or worldview are in tension with the faith that they were raised in. If that's you, I want you to know that you're not alone. There's no perfect playbook for how to do this, but there are tools, there are truths. And there's a way to walk this road that keeps your conscience clear and your heart soft. So let's start at the beginning with my story. I was 19 years old when I came out to my parents. I had been pulling away from them for a few years, mostly out of fear. I knew they wouldn't approve of my same sex relationship. And while I missed their presence in my life, their wisdom, their comfort, their perspective, shame and fear kept me at a distance. But after a particularly intense breakup, I found myself spiraling. I felt untethered from my worth and my identity. I didn't know who I was anymore or where I was going. And in my desperation to feel known and loved and seen by someone, anyone, I decided to go home. Kind of like the prodigal son, I came back. I didn't know how my parents would respond, but I knew I needed connection more than anything else. What I didn't know at the time was that my parents already knew. They'd found out about my same sex relationship 3 years earlier. And do you know what they'd been doing in those 3 years? Praying, processing, surrendering their emotions, fears, sadness, confusion, even anger over to God. So when I finally walked into their room and spoke the words out loud, they didn't panic. They didn't lash out. And they didn't shut down. They simply said, "We know, and we love you." They didn't pretend to agree with my choices, but they made it crystal clear that nothing I could do or say would ever change their love for me. And that changed everything for me. It was their steady, unwavering love, anchored not in approval, but in God, that eventually helped me understand something far more powerful: God's unwavering love for me, even in my sin, even in my confusion, even in the middle of all the ways I was searching for identity in the wrong places. Because that's what I was doing, searching for identity, for belonging, for wholeness. I tried to find it in relationships with women, in friendships, in school, in travel, in my job, even in alcohol and substances. Those things took the edge off of the ache inside of me, but they never filled it. I now recognize that ache as the one Ecclesiastes speaks of: the ache of eternity in our hearts, the ache of living outside of Eden, of longing for a home we were made for, but can't yet fully access. That ache was real, but the relief I was chasing, it was temporary, fleeting, like trying to fill a God-shaped hole in my heart with sand that quickly blew away. And then came my rock bottom. I was living in Ireland at the time, running from everything, really, trying to throw more sand into that God-shaped hole in my heart, but nothing was working. I lived alone in a converted garage with no hot water, just a sink that I used to shower in. No friends, no fulfillment. I was working full time, but through an unpaid internship. I was exhausted and empty. One night, I found myself walking down a pitch black road in the middle of the Irish mountains. No street lamps, no houses, no signs of life, just darkness. I was completely alone, lost and afraid, with nothing around me except for the sound of rushing water. And so panic set in. I thought I might accidentally step off the side of the road into the fjord and die. And in that terrifying moment, something in me snapped, or maybe sobered. I realized how far I'd run and how empty I still was, how utterly lost, physically, emotionally, spiritually, I had become. That moment broke something in me. Whatever illusions I had left, they shattered. I tried everything, even moving across the world, and I was even more miserable than when I started. So, because my parents had built a bridge, not a wall, during our season of theological disagreement, I was able to run to them for help and for comfort. And because they had done the hard work of refining their own hearts during the time of my wandering, surrendering their fear and grief to God, they were in a posture to be used by Him. They had become vessels that the Spirit could speak through at a time where I was finally ready to listen. And because of their well timed words, coming not from a place of panic, but from a place of rooted surrender, I decided to give God another shot. Not in a polished spiritual way, but raw, unfiltered, desperate. I came back to Him the same way that I came back to my parents 2 years earlier, scared, unsure, and longing for connection. And to my surprise, and honestly to everyone else's, it stuck. I returned to my parents' love at 18, and I returned to God's arms at 20. Since then, I've earned a master's in counseling and become both a licensed marriage and family therapist and a clinical mental health counselor. Today, I run a small practice in North Carolina, and I help oversee two nonprofit organizations, the Strength and Weakness Ministries, which helps bridge the gap between the Christian community and the LGBTQ community, and Heart Set Above, which helps people deepen their relationships with God, within self, and with others in a world so far from Eden. For more than a decade, I've had the privilege of walking alongside Christian families wrestling with hard questions about faith, identity, relationships, parenting, and more. And I've learned something important. Whether your adult child is exploring a different religion, or living with someone outside of marriage, or walking away from God altogether, or like I did, finding their identity outside of biblical truth, you can still show up with love. You can still be steady. You can still walk the narrow road of truth and grace with your conscience clear and your heart wide open. And the episodes that follow will unpack some of the most common things I've seen Christian parents wrestle with: letting go of guilt and embracing the slow development of adulthood, naming and grieving unmet expectations, moving from control to surrendered presence, and finding practical, compassionate ways to stay connected without compromising truth. If you're in that messy, sacred space, trying to love your adult child well while staying true to God, this series is for you. Thanks for listening today. If this story touched something in you or reminded you of your own journey, I'd love to hear from you. Share this episode with a friend who's walking a similar path, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's next. Until next time, let's keep our hearts set on things above.